Thanks, everyone. So I'm Dave Crooks. I'm head of cybersecurity for scientific computing at STFC, amongst other things, including leading cybersecurity activity for the DRI program overall. Let's get started. So I wanted to put the motivation slide in here. I don't really necessarily think we will need this, but it's a security talk, and I think it's useful to ground the work and to know that the threat of cybersecurity attack in our sector is high and persistent. If it was ever the case that we were protected by being in research and education, it's certainly not true now. And the key message is we need to work together. The government strategy, one of the long lines there is defend as one, and that's really important, both within organisations and across our sector and community. And so we must work together. We need to share information. We need to work on how we build that together. And so I think an underlying strand in all of this work today and otherwise, but particularly here, is building community and working with people is a really profound part of this work. So to give some background and context for all the work that's happening in this area, so there is an existing DRI cybersecurity activity, which I lead, which is looking at the broader DRI landscape as well. We've had 2 previous workshops. The next one is going to take place in Edinburgh on the 11th and 12th of May. If you want to say the date, you're more welcome to come. And we've had sessions at other conferences, including DRI Congress. And scope is obviously an important question. So the scope of that work is sort of deliberately expansive, so that we kind of encompass everything we need to, and so therefore understand where some of the boundaries are. But then we do need to make sure that we have specific work happening within that scope, of which this is an example, and noting here and then, obviously, for the duration, the importance of the significant potential of the international nature of this work, where the federations and the infrastructures that we're working with are inherently international and global, and so is security. And so this is part of an aligned overall international security activity, where we're working hard to make sure that we're connected up across our different environments. So the goals and deliverables of this particular project are engaging across the NFCS communities and projects to build both a community of practice within NFCS, centred around Objective A of the NCSC Cyber Assessment Framework. I have to pause at this point and ask hands up who's heard of the Cyber Assessment Framework. Great. So what's been really interesting charting that over the years, because now I think that's the vast, or a good majority, so that's great. I will still introduce it because I'm required to, but we're going to be using Objective A, which is managing risk. So governance, risk management, which is really important and a foundational topic for this work. And so working with the community to develop the contribution to the overall NFCS roadmap for cybersecurity, and using that to be able to provide feedback to the funders, to sort of management in terms of potential policy and strategic directions that are useful and suggested by the needs of the community, and vice versa. So that's important as well. And so there are broadly 3 project themes. One is taking stock, understanding what the community does now, what the current challenges are, what happens introducing federations, how that changes things, how do we need to work together to ensure that cybersecurity is addressed, and then as the sort of contribution to the roadmap develops, making sure that it makes sense and it's sort of hangs true for the community. So in generating a community of practice, this is again part of, I sort of see this as the overall sort of broadest scope of DRI cybersecurity, and I see that this is fully nested within that, because this is clearly part of the DRI. You can imagine that there's some parts which are outside it, but it's clearly part of the same overall piece of work. And so if we can build those together, I'd say that's optimal. So then using that to both understand needs and challenges across the community, but also establish the interpersonal links to build trust, which is so important in moving forward with this work. Again, playing a vital role in forming sense checking the roadmap, as well as being able to provide feedback as we move forward. So, as promised, of course, I have to talk about CAF. National Cybersecurity Centre, the CAF, it's core to the government cyber strategy up till 2030, coming originally from critical national infrastructure. It's now mandated for all government departments and a number of arms-like bodies, including UK Research and Innovation, so we've actually direct contact there. And indeed, looking back to this morning when we were talking about NCRs, part of the call identified a requirement for the enhanced profile CAF there. So this has already become part of our environment, and really the CAF is going to be a really important vehicle and tool for us throughout this work in lots of different ways. And so, as mentioned, the project will focus on the foundational governance and risk elements. So here at the top left, and you'll be able to read that better in the slides. Just quickly though, pulling out, noting that objective A in the CAF is basically managing risk. Objective B is protecting your systems, so that's policies, it's system hardening, it's network hardening, it's policies and training. So training is definitely there. Detection, which I think is a really interesting question when it comes to federation, what that means. And then minimizing the impact of incidents, which is both incident response and then recovery. So looking at particular activities within the project, a lot of this will focus around, we are currently going through procurement of a vendor to facilitate between 4 or 5 workshops driven by Objective A, where we're looking to both look at that objective in detail, both at organisations but also at the federation level, but like mix those into the same workshops to understand where the CAF makes sense at a federation level. You can maybe imagine that there are some elements which will be places where it makes less relevance for the federation to specify things, but it can nonetheless give a framework through other elements. And a key part of this, and I think this is going to be with us for a while, in perpetuity, right? Which is that research compute has key requirements and environments which make them distinct to what you might call the conventional sort of enterprise IT, where the controls that we will need are different just because of the different environment and the different risk appetite. And it may well require a custom CAF profile, which is certainly possible, an overlay set of implementation guides, how-to guides. These I would say are likely to be useful for this community, and so feedback is really important. And separately, I'm hoping that this year we could have a goal of having, because there's a few activities which I think are useful, really trying to kind of bottom this out this calendar year, so that we can sort of have a position on how that's going to be most useful to our sector. In terms of developing the roadmap, this will come through both workshop outputs and recommendations, and then other feedback as we work sort of leading up to the workshops, articulating an evidencing requirement, setting out the options, and then moving to a series of actionable recommendations. And I think, again, just looking back to the start, where this project will liaise very closely with other activities, other Network Plus projects, as well as other activities such as the DRI AAAI project, and as mentioned, the DRI Cybersecurity project. And I think it's worth noting here that when we talk about identity management and we talk about security, those two are very strongly interconnected, and we need to make sure that we are dealing with both of those in parallel as we move forward. So, coming to I think the second last slide, a couple of notes about sort of modus operandi. So, due to the sensitivity of some of the discussions, confidentiality, the membership of the community will be drawn from DRI providers and communities sort of through documentation, so we'll identify people, but then add them to the community from there. We will be inviting members of the community to join the workshops once the details of those have been finalised. And then as we go on, we'll engage with the NFCS community prior to the workshops to identify challenges and opportunities. So, you know, anticipate a survey or survey-like thing to come before that in discussion with the NAR+ team and other projects. And so then as a last slide, which with thanks was put in at the very last minute, I do have a QR code, or you can use the link if you want. So this is a form to basically express interest to join the DRI cybersecurity community, as we talked about earlier. And so by so doing, we would add you to both as a JISC mail mailing list and also a Teams community on the STFC tenancy. And what we're looking for is, so people interested in really playing an active role in this, but across a range of technical and more strategic and managed aspects. And so, yes, like one extra step, but once we sort of moderated the request, then we'll add you. And then that's where in the community and the mailing list will have a lot more information as we go forward. And that's it for me. Thank you.